From Chicago's CAN TV, this is Chicago Newsroom. From Chicago's CAN TV, this is Chicago Newsroom.
Well, hi there, and welcome to the splendiferous Chicago Newsroom in magnificent high definition. What do you say, huh? Oh, no, I've been dreading this day for a long time, folks. I don't... Yes, it's true. We're catching up with everybody else on the dial today in there. See, look at that. Isn't that beautiful? You can see the entire... Anyway, hey, let's get to work, shall we? We begin today with the Sweetened beverage tax. County Board President Toni Preckwinkle wants it. She says the county's 2018 budget, which she's unveiling this very morning as we're sitting here speaking, needs more revenue to support the two main classes of service that the county provides. And you know what they are, because she says them all the time. Say them along with me: law enforcement and public health, right? And the way she intends to raise the almost $200 million she says the county needs to fill this budget up is, as we all know, with a tax on so-called sweetened beverages of 1% per ounce. Now, you know, we've talked about this before. It doesn't sound like very much, but as the opponents have pointed out, it can mean that the total taxes on a 1-liter bottle of pop, depending on how much they're charging for the soda in it, can set you back a full $1. So there is a full-on movement to repeal the tax. The county board just passed, and one commissioner, Richard Boykin, has really emerged as the voice of that opposition, even though he's a Democrat and he's often on Preckwinkle's side. Are you following all of this? Well, it's easily the most divisive and nasty tax fight we've seen in these parts for a decade or more. And in Sunday's Sun-Times, Dan Mihalopoulos revealed that Boykin may have some financial conflicts in the form of payments from PepsiCo to a law firm in which he's a partner, and it's all incredibly complicated, so it won't be for long because Dan's sitting right here and he's going to explain it all to us.
Yeah, well, we can unpack it. It's actually, I think, quite simple. Boykin works for a firm called Barnes and Thornberg. He doesn't just work for them, he's a partner. So as he... Big
firm, we've all heard of Barnes and Thornberg.
Yeah, he shares in revenue as a partner, and they have a client called PepsiCo, which I think quite obviously has an interest in this issue. They've donated money to Boykin and every other commissioner who's opposed to this tax. They've donated money
only to them?
Also to 16, no less than 16 of the co-sponsors of legislation in Springfield that would repeal this tax, and also to a PAC that's recently been created to oppose this tax, or to support people who oppose this tax and punish people that support the tax.
But I mean, they're fairly obvious about it. They're not giving money to commissioners who are in favor of the tax.
No.
So okay.
No, their position on this is clear. They have no qualms about saying that, and I think that would be obvious to anyone that if you are Pepsi or Coca-Cola or any of the sweetened beverage giants, I call it pop because I'm from here.
Because that's what we call it.
That's what we call it, and I insist that that's the style that we use in my column.
And this is Chicago Access Network, and so we talk Chicago here.
That's right. We talk pop, not soda. Yeah. So yeah, I think they've been a client of Barnes Thornberg for a number of years in a number of federal cases, employment discrimination cases, sexual harassment cases in the workplace, and other cases. They've represented Coca-Cola as well in the last couple years. They also, Pepsi also had hired Barnes Thornberg to lobby for them, according to Pepsi, at City Hall when the government of the city of Chicago considered a pop tax. Never came to fruition, was rejected ultimately, and we can assume that that's partly through the lobbying efforts of Barnes Thornberg and the decisions that the alderman and the mayor made ultimately. So I think it's fairly simple that he has profited from all of the clients of that firm as a partner, and one of them is Pepsi, and I think it was fair to point that out.
And this is where it gets tricky, because you are not saying, your article did not say, and I assume that you don't necessarily believe that he got some money from Pepsi and then therefore flipped his vote and decided that he's going to be against the tax. It's just part of the picture, right? It's not, one does not necessarily precipitate the other.
Only he can tell you what precipitated the actions that he's taken. He says that he's against all regressive taxes, and he considers this a regressive tax. This is his opinion on the matter. And, you know, he's been a lobbyist for a long time. He's been a public servant, an elected official since 2014 on the county board, and before that was an aide, I think top aide, to Congressman Danny Davis. And sometimes that's not unique, you know, to be a public servant and to have a private job that, you know, conceivably pays you a lot more money than even your quote-unquote full-time public position.
Even when that job is lobbying public bodies to change or support laws.
Yeah, that's not entirely rare. I think there are other commissioners as well and other elected officials who are even lobbyists at other levels of government. But, you know, you get into a situation where you have someone like Boykin who's being lobbied by Pepsi now, and his company had lobbied for them at another local level of government here in Illinois. You know, what his motivation is only for him to answer.
I've heard it said that a major part of the reason why this has become such a hot button issue here in Cook County is because what's pejoratively being called big soda, big pop, they're getting really kind of freaked out by the fact that these things have been coming up in various cities around the country and other jurisdictions, and they seem to be winning, and they are losing. So maybe they decided to make a big stand in Cook County.
Any issue that we're talking about here, we look at Uber and the ride-sharing business. You know, Chicago's a big market for them, for the pop manufacturers. So surely, I mean, if you have a business that's global, even within your worldwide interests, Chicago is a big market, and it could influence what other municipalities or governments do in other parts of the country and the world. So I think this is obviously an important stand for quote-unquote big soda to take. It's also apparently a big stand for their opponents, because you have someone from out of town like Michael Bloomberg, the billionaire, multi-billionaire, and former mayor of New York, who is donating millions of dollars. It's really pocket change for him, but is taking a big stand against big soda. That's one of his issues, is against sweetened beverages, because they feel that the cost to society of the illnesses that come from these, the consumption of these products, is far greater than, you know, whatever other interests are involved.
One of the things that we've seen from President Preckwinkle is that she has been making the rounds here and other places, making what I would say is an eloquent argument that, look, you know, we don't pick up your garbage or trim your trees or pave your streets, all the things that you look out the window and you say, look, the city's working for me, they're doing these things. What we do is we arrest people, put them in prison, we deal with the people who have the lowest access to health, and we fix them and all that kind of thing. And so therefore, our taxes are less popular than others, but they're actually more meaningful because we have to do the things that absolutely must be done, and we don't have enough money to do this, and so this was our last and only resort. Do you have a response to that, or I mean, not you personally, but how do you respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, certainly county government, we see it, you know, in this neighborhood. We're near the county hospital. The relatively new county hospital, you know, that's the last resort for a lot of people, and certainly a lot of people that pay taxes might not use that system themselves. They might know somebody who does, might have a relative that does, or they might not know anyone that does. But yeah, she certainly has a point there. Yeah, you know, it's very difficult for me to understand why this has become such a huge issue when, you know, she also ran on getting rid of the sales tax that Todd Stroger supported. She did get rid of it, and now, you know, has brought it back. I thought maybe that was a bigger issue, certainly in dollar terms. Now we get to this tax, and it's supposedly going to be worth an estimated $200 million to the county. So she's saying if we get rid of it, then everyone needs to take an 11% cut. I'm not convinced that it was or would generate assuming that it's not repealed, and I wouldn't assume that really, but let's say that it remains in place, I wouldn't assume that it's going to generate $200 million. I mean, we reported a few weeks ago, there's another analysis by Jones Lang LaSalle, and the exact numbers escape me now, but I believe that their conservative estimate was that it would generate far less, just a fraction of $200 million. I mean, one of the problems is you raise taxes on something and you might reduce consumption of it and purchases of it within the county at least, to the point that it doesn't generate that much revenue for you.
Right. Well, I mean, look at the plastic bag tax that the city imposed. The bad news is it didn't raise anywhere near as much money as the city thought. The good news is that it actually changed people's habits, and very, very many fewer people are taking plastic bags, which is a good thing for society. So.
Right. The economic term that I've heard used is elasticity of price. So let's take the parking meters.
Right.
They were privatized, obviously, almost 10 years ago now. They raise the rates constantly every year on January the 1st, and there's an elasticity of price there. So they were raising the rates. It did affect how many people were parking, but not so much so that their revenues
were not affected.
Not skyrocketing regardless. And in this case, there may not be that elasticity of price. And you add a penny per ounce, you itemize it as a vendor, supermarket or whoever's selling this pop itemizes it separately, leaves signs next to your display of these items in your aisles, and it may affect how much people do buy. Well,
there's a show that I like to think of as our sister show. The first Tuesdays over at the Hideout with Ben and Mick, Ben Jarofsky and Mick Dumke, and they had it on a Wednesday this week because they were able to get both Commissioner Boykin and Commissioner Suffredin, and it was a barn burner of a show, a wonderful show, which I believe you'll be able to see online. I don't have the information here right now, but it's called First Tuesdays, and it's really worth watching. About an hour and a half of these two guys just very moderately and quietly but forcefully just fighting the heck out of each other all night long. And of course you were brought up during this thing because your article hangs rather precipitously over their heads. And Commissioner Boykin actually responded to you. I think I gotta, let's take a look at this. Let's listen to what Commissioner Boykin had to say right here.
Let me first of all deal with the Dan Mihalopoulos article. I thought it was a hit job on me personally, and quite frankly, I've sent a letter to the firm because I don't want even the hint or appearance of impropriety relative to the firm doing business with PepsiCo, and somehow I'm benefiting financially from it. That was the subject of the article, and somehow Dan stretched it and said, hey, the firm is doing millions of dollars worth of business with, PepsiCo and Coca-Cola. The reality of it is, I work at a law firm that has 800 lawyers, 13 offices nationwide, and we've done less than $10,000 worth of business, legal business, this year with PepsiCo. And so what I did is I sent a letter to the management committee at the firm and said to them, I don't want any proceeds as a part of my share as a partner from the firm from PepsiCo or Coca-Cola litigation related matters or legal representation. I've also shared that letter with the ethics committee at the county because I've asked the county for an ethics opinion on this. I also understand somebody asked the state's attorneys for an ethics opinion on me. It's okay. So let me deal with the other part of it.
Well, one of the other parts of the article was that it was not just PepsiCo directly, but there was another organization that PepsiCo, that helps, that PepsiCo helps fund, that did a lot more business with.
Right. But that representation was from 2013 to 2016. First of all, I did very little on that in terms of taking people to meetings in Washington, D.C. They made about, according to the article, $900,000 in billings. And so they said that PepsiCo made donations to School Nutrition Association. I don't know. I have no idea. All I can do is tell you this, is that if I think there is a conflict of interest, I would recuse myself in a heartbeat.
Let's take this one thing at a time. You mention in your article that he did what's the word, not recuse himself from payments, right?
No, he didn't say that.
Oh, he
and
didn't
I don't
say that.
believe he did that until either I interviewed him or the story ran. That's news to me
Okay.
that he would say that he has now asked his company not to share the profits from their work for Pepsi with him. Is he giving back the money that he has made off them? I don't hear that, not in those comments that were made. But let me back up to his first thing that he said, hit job.
Hit job.
That's slanderous, first of all. If you mean hit job in the sense of what I think hit job means to everyone, he's saying that somebody paid me to write about him. I get paid my salary. I don't get more or less depending on what I write about Boykin or anybody else. So I think that's a very serious allegation that he's making that's completely false and slanderous, frankly. If what he means is that somebody that doesn't like him or disagrees with him on this issue may be spreading this information, we do get tips and we write about them when they check out. And this tip did check out. Now, he also makes another statement that we said that there were millions of dollars that were paid by these companies to his firm. Did not say that in the piece. Anybody's welcome to read the piece again. Did not say that. In fact, we don't know how much money his firm made. He didn't share that information. He says that this year, they got paid less than $10,000 by
critical
Pepsi.
this year, yeah.
But they've represented them for years and years in a variety of cases. And if the amount of money that Pepsi has paid to Barnes and Thornberg to represent them in a number of cases and to lobby for them at City Hall is that minuscule, that would represent one of the deals of the century for Pepsi, I think. But he's welcome to disclose how much money he has made off of them. But I'm not aware that he is no longer going to get funding from them or share in those proceeds, because when I talked to him, it was very clear that he's a partner and he shares in the profits of the firm, and PepsiCo is a client of the firm. And it's quite simple.
Could we talk about this $900,000 in billing part? I'm not quite sure. Well, first of all, I guess we need to back up a half a step and talk about the Americans United for treating our dear children like the wonderful people that they are, whatever the name of that group is.
The Nutrition Association. I think they're known in D.C. as the Lunch Ladies.
Yeah. They, if I'm not mistaken, they've been active in the past when the city's tried to act on sweetened drinks, and they have defended sweetened drinks in schools. Is that not correct?
I'm not familiar with all of the positions that the Nutrition Association has taken in Washington. There's a lot of people that in Washington have accused them of being a front group for the quote-unquote junk food interests, including sweetened beverages.
Snacks and vending machines.
Right. There are a lot of people that have accused that group of undermining the efforts of Michelle Obama when she was the First Lady to require more healthy lunches at schools. What I do know, though, for a fact is that Pepsi has given money to this group, and that Commissioner Boykin personally has lobbied for them in Washington. He says he hadn't done it in a couple years. Federal records show that as late as 2016, he lobbied for them. Along
so that
with
would have been
other,
while he was a county commissioner.
Since he was a county commissioner, I think he only started working for them in 2013 or 2014. I'd have to check the records.
And he was elected in 2014.
He was elected in 2014. So while he was a county commissioner, he did lobby for this group. They paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to his firm for the services of Commissioner Boykin, as well as some other lobbyists from that firm. They lobbied in D.C. for him, and the group gets money from Pepsi. He says he didn't know that the Nutrition Association got money from Pepsi.
Let me.
I take that at face value.
Let me go take this ladder from the top down. Commissioner Boykin gets paid by the law firm, right?
He's
Barnes and Thornberg, right? He gets paid for services that he does for the law firm. The law firm gets paid. Has a contract with, is it PepsiCo or the Nutrition Council?
They've worked for both of them.
Okay, so in the case of, let's say it's the Nutrition Council, they're getting money from PepsiCo, and so is the law firm getting money from PepsiCo. And Commissioner Boykin, the record shows that he was a lobbyist for, at least for the Nutrition Council, right?
That's correct.
And that he lobbied who?
He lobbied in Washington.
He lobbied senators, congressmen, or something?
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to look at the exact records of what he disclosed, but he's a lobbyist for that group.
He is a lobbyist, all right.
Yeah. He was.
So he has, as far as you knew when you wrote the article, he had been paid to advocate for the soft drink industry and its affiliated partners. Is that a fact?
No, his
that's
firm represented in legal cases and as a lobbyist, Pepsi itself. Okay? He personally, as a lobbyist, represented a group that gets funding from Pepsi.
Okay, I see. All right, I understand. All right. So he says that he has told them that he doesn't want any of this money.
From Pepsi.
From Pepsi, right.
That's what he said last night.
Right. But we don't know, as you said, whether that includes the money that he most likely already has been paid, since it's been going on for a few years.
Oh, yeah.
And we also, okay, all right, I think, so that's where we're at, and that's how we come down to this thing about the hit job. What do you think is going to happen? Do you have an opinion on what's going to happen next week when they take they're going to take a vote to repeal the tax? Now, Boykin voted against it, and it was a deadlock, and President Preckwinkle broke the tie, and it passed. Mm-hmm. So
that was last year.
That was last year.
Before
they
this
only have to flip like one vote, right?
Well, they would only have to flip one vote, that's true, to repeal it. It's a little more complicated than that. There's a new commissioner who replaced someone who passed away and who wasn't at that meeting, passed away shortly after that vote, which I think was in November of last year. And then there's the issue of if Preckwinkle vetoes any repeal measure, they would need more votes to override her veto. What Boykin told me last week, I don't know what he said last night, but what he told me last week was that he believes the votes are there, that there's at least a couple people, or one or two, I think he said, that will flip and allow them to repeal. He wouldn't say who.
Yeah, he said that last night, that at least a couple of people are going to flip.
Right, but he doesn't know if they're enough to override.
If that's it. So
in the event that she does indeed.
Am I hearing you say that there's a pretty strong likelihood that this tax is going to stand?
No, not necessarily. I mean, there's another X factor here, and that's Michael Madigan.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about that, have we?
There are measures, as we mentioned before, Pepsi has donated to no less than 16 lawmakers who are co-sponsors of, there's a couple different measures, I think, that have been introduced in Springfield that would repeal the pop tax here in Cook County, that would essentially, Bigfoot the county board and the president of the county board. What are the odds that passes in Springfield? I think it depends largely on Mike Madigan. He hasn't professed an opinion one way or the other, but I think the tea leaves are certainly there that show that perhaps he's opposed to the pop tax. I think he thinks it's probably harmful to some of his allies. For instance, he has a county board ally who's a longtime precinct captain in Ed Moody, who has indicated, at least publicly, that he's considering flipping, or at least that he's still undecided. He had voted for it last year. He was appointed to fill a vacancy, and he could, and he's running for a full term, and I'm sure he wants to win. And I think that this has been used against him by some of his opponents and some of his critics in his district. And so when a guy like Moody, who's so close to Madigan, says he's undecided, we reported a few weeks ago that the anti-tax PAC that's been created has as its treasurer a guy named Mike Casper, who is Mike Madigan's lawyer, is the lawyer for the state Democratic Party of Illinois. So I think there's some wild cards there. So I think it's impossible to predict how this will end up. What's certain, as you pointed out at the beginning of this program, is Toni Preckwinkle is standing by her initial stand, and
Yeah, she doesn't seem to be backing down at all.
no, she doesn't seem to be prone to backing down very often, and I think that's probably both a virtue and to her detriment at times.
Yeah. So I guess that's all we know about it at this point. As I said, as we're sitting here speaking, she's unveiling her budget, and her budget is balanced because it has this $200 million in it. Sounds like the city with the CPS funding, right? Like $245 million is just going to show up. But that's what she says, and of course she does have legal standing because the county board has approved it. So
The county board has approved it,
Right.
and as far as we know, until next week, that will still be a tax that that they have here in Cook
So
County.
she's saying that if the repeal movement goes forward and succeeds, that she wants an 11% cut from every department. And Boykin last night was railing about that and saying that he believes that there are any number of departments where there are cuts that could be made that are substantially more than 10%, and was talking at length about the unfilled positions. There are 1,000 some positions that are unfilled, and you could just start chopping those. And then, of course, Commissioner Suffredin said, well, that you obviously just don't even understand how budgeting is done, because many of those positions are empty and they're only filled with $1 because they're just being held in the hope that they can be filled another time. So that's not really a budget savings, and on it goes.
Yeah, I mean, we could argue forever whether there are other ways to take $200 million out of the county's expenditures, and whether that would be wise and who would be hurt.
Right. And I think many arguments have been made that a lot of people would be hurt. But one of the things that I've never quite understood is that we have not heard this from the president until recently. When she was on the show here a while back, I believe she said it here, or maybe I heard it somewhere else, that there was a potential $100 million shortfall, but now suddenly we're hearing about a $200 million shortfall. So
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, $200 million, it originally was $225 million. But, these things are difficult to project, and the forecasts that they do of tax revenue sometimes are off due to economic circumstances. And I think the more publicity that you see around this tax, the more it's going to hurt their collection of revenues from it. And there's certainly been a lot of publicity.
Yeah. Well, we're going to watch it. We're really going to watch it play out in the next few days, and it's going to be very interesting to see. But you really sort of threw a firecracker into the middle of this debate with your Sunday piece. And
it is what it is, and except for the fact that Boykin invented there about the millions of dollars, I think that those are the facts, and what you want to make of them is up to you.
Yeah.
And if he wants to downplay them, that's fine. But as of the time I interviewed him, he was still getting everything that he was entitled to as a partner, and that's one of their clients.
Right. Okay, well, we'll let that one drop. We've got like a minute left, and I am so curious about this. It has nothing to do with anything else. How's the Sun-Times doing? How has your job changed since the Sun-Times has changed owners? I mean, just tell me something.
Maybe it's just been a short period, but I still feel fully supported to write about whatever we determine and discern to be of interest to our readers. There's really been no change. I think talking about ownership and things like that are the sort of navel-gazing that journalists like to do. And obviously, in the long run, that could have consequences for everyone's employment, and more importantly, for the public. There should be strong news outlets locally and nationally, as fortunately there still are, and I think we count ourselves among those.
So you don't have to all stand up first thing in the morning and sing Union Maid before you go to your desk or anything?
No, not at all. I mean, there's not any difference for me. Since the ownership changed in terms of what expectations are for a reporter or a columnist and what they should cover.
Well, I'm among the people who is absolutely thrilled to see that an independent group, and you can define independent any way you want, but a group that's not the group that was going to take it over has taken it over, and I think that's probably good for us all.
Well, we worked for him too, and we did our jobs then.
Yeah, yeah.
And we're still doing them.
It's a tough business to be in, and I'm glad you're there.
I'm very glad that I'm still there, and I'm having fun, and I think we're doing something important.
Yeah. Good luck to you.
Thanks.
And to all of you. All right, well, thank you. Dan Mihalopoulos is with the Chicago Sun-Times, and we're happy to have him here at the table with us. And you've been watching Chicago Newsroom. It is a production of Chicago News, it is a production of CAN TV, Chicago Newsroom, right here on CAN TV. I'm Ken Davis. You can watch this and all of our other programs by going to this address right here, and you will be able to see all of our shows, this and others. And we will see you back again next week with another show right here on CAN TV and on your device. Don't forget, listen to us on SoundCloud too. It's a good radio show. See you next week. Bye-bye.